going on, everybody? Gonna send out links. Just doing a little test stream to see how this is gonna look once me and Tim start doing our deep dive into the House of the Dragon. Once the season's over and we go back through each episode and do a rewatch and do a deep dive. Not sure if I'll even keep this video up. I might delete it after it posts, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm just kind of, it's pretty impromptu, so we'll see if anybody showing up asking questions. We get a conversation going, then I'll keep it up and I'll post it online. If not, then I'll just delete it and it'll be like it never happened. But give me 1 second here. I want to send out the links. All right, post this up on. Man, I got the such a wild person on my Twitter feed arguing with Tim right now. So there's this guy. I did a video yesterday in response to this guy talking about how Rhaenyra is being butchered from the books, and so I kind of defended the showrunners against that claim. And then he's been going on and on about how her interaction with Kristen Cole was not consensual, and so he's been going off on this for 2 days now. He's got a clear heavy bias. But let me see. Change this link. All right. So basically what we're going to do when we go through House of the Dragon is I'll be pull this up on my iPad. Yeah, okay. So now I'm good. I got everything set up here. All right, so yeah, show is not a disappointment overall. Can't say the same for Rings of Power. Yeah, I would say it's not even close to a disappointment. I'm loving every minute of House of the Dragon. Like I came into it. I'm a huge fan of A Song of Ice and Fire, George R. R. Martin. So in the same vein of the Kingkiller Chronicles. So pretty protective of that IP. So I was going in with the expectations that they were going to butcher it, considering how much stuff leans into, a lot of political current events type of things where they're just kind of they're using they're using shows to kind of push their ideas on their current value systems rather than just adapting the characters as they are in that world in that time period. And so this in House of the Dragon is so ripe for that kind of thing, given the dynamics between a woman versus a man vying for power and those kind of things. So I thought they were just gonna lean heavy into that, and I thought they were gonna butcher it. But then I watched that first episode and I was like, wow, that's about as good of an opening as you're gonna get. And then by the third episode, I was pretty hooked. Just wanted to see like the new actors, see how consistent they stayed to the books. But obviously, the showrunner for House of the Dragon, he's a super fan, clearly, because he's not only adapting the books, but he is staying very consistent to the source material. Like pretty much everything that happens, even if it doesn't happen exactly in the way that it happens on the show. Like sometimes they change the setting a little bit, or they combine an event, or they move it forward or back a little bit, just for the narrative. But it's all pretty much source material that they're adapting. They're not really not doing just their own thing. They're trying to adapt the book as best they can. So it's one of those stories where it's like, if you don't like the story, that's more on George R. R. Martin than the showrunners, because the show is better than the book. The book is a recounting of events. It's not like a novel where you're in the narrative and you're in these characters living with them and their emotions and all those kind of things. It's someone recounting what happened in the past. So it's more like a history book. It's good. I like reading it. I like the information you get out of it, but it's not like reading, Storm of Swords or Game of Thrones or Feast for Crows or any of those books. It's completely different. And I think the show has done a better job bringing the series to life than the book could, just because of the limitations of that style of book. So I think they've done great. Rings of Power is an abomination. Yeah, House of the Dragon's hitting out of the park so far, visually, story wise, acting, directing. As far as I'm concerned, they're killing. Yeah, I agree. I agree. They are putting out. Oh man, I didn't mean to hit play. They are killing it. I mean, everything that they're doing. When you go, especially when you compare it against the books, I mean, they are. It's phenomenal. Like the point that they're at now after episode 8, it's more or less exactly where the kickoff point is for the Dance with Dragons, and the main story that they're going to tell. They're pretty much there. There's a little bit differences, like her kid, her two youngest that she has with Damon. They're a little bit older in the books. So the character ages are slightly different, not dramatically. They were still young kids in the books, but there's differences as far as the age of the characters a little bit. But as far as like where everything's positioned, they're pretty much right there. And then I heard that one of the kids that they're not showing on, that they haven't been showing so far, that is Darren. He's going to be in the second season. So he in the book he goes off to Old Town, and so they're just having it that currently he's in Old Town and he'll be in the second season. So and I was curious what they would do, because you can't. I don't see how you would do the story without Darren. He's kind of important to what happens, throughout the next few seasons. But yeah, I mean, it seems like they're going to do a really good job. I'm curious how far they go into it in episode 9 and 10. I have a pretty good idea. I could bet money on we're going to get at least one event is we're for sure going to get, but we might get a couple of the early events that kind of kick things off. I would bet money we get at least one of those, maybe in the next episode, and then maybe if we do get the one I'm thinking about in the next episode, we're probably going to get the one after that, and it would, if they do what they do in the books, it's going to get some reactions from people, and they haven't shied away from anything so far. So I would be surprised if they shy away from it, in the show. It's pretty. They got some crazy stuff that they got to cover. But Nicholas, if you're still on here, Nicholas, do you are you liking House of the Dragon, or are you just kind of mixed feelings on it? And then, so what we'll be doing when we go back through the show, me and Tim, we'll just be going scene by scene, kind of, have the show pulled up and just kind of go through scene by scene and talk about it and discuss, what happened in the particular scene. Talk about, how it fits with the source material, whether it's new information or if it's straight from the source. Kind of give the interpretations, because in the source material they go from they have three different accounts. So it's this maester is retelling the history of that time, and he's using three different sources for his recounting of the events. And so he pulls from all three. So sometimes he's like, so and so says this, Mushroom says this guy says this, and you don't know exactly what happened. So I'll kind of, when we go through the episodes, and I'll pull in, I'll show, here's what the show chose. Here were the options that were presented in the book. Sometimes they go their own route and they're doing their own thing, but it is still based off of the source material. It's just their interpretation of what they think would have happened versus what these three characters, because it's an unreliable narrative. I mean, not all of these guys, they weren't there for every event, and so a lot of it's secondhand information. A lot of it seems like it's pure BS coming from like Mushroom especially. But yeah, they got a lot of good information to pull from. Yeah, Amond is phenomenal, man. You said Amond is looking scary. Amon on the little kid that played Amon in the previous episode. Man, what a job that kid did. He had so little screen time, and he established that character so well. Like, I usually hate when they got young kids in shows because it's almost always terrible. I mean, the kids are not competent enough to pull off the acting skills that are necessary to like keep you immersed in the story. So I usually hate when little kids are in it, but man, that kid killed it. And then the actor that they got playing him now, he is so good. Like the scene where he's yeah, like the have you come to train? Like, he's a badass, man. Like the standoff he has with Damon, that stuff was so good. I was loving every minute of this guy's portrayal of him, and his speech with the three strong boys, which is straight from the source. That was great. I mean, like what this guy's able to do with just that one eye is pretty badass. Like, he's pulling him off really well. I feel like every fight on the show moving forward will start with people ironically complimenting one another. Call me strong one more time. Yeah, yeah. Eamon is going to keep his eye peeled for backhanded compliments. But ching. The nuance of young Aemond and Aegon's back and forth was great. Agreed. Like, they are killing it. I mean, what they're accomplishing is pretty freaking impressive. And then the scene that they have in that throne room in this episode, this was good. Although, I hate that girl's wig. Like, the other girl, hers looks good, but when they do that hair, that wig, and they got it all bunched up like that, it looks so weird. That's about the only thing that ever tosses me out, is when they don't keep it like close crop to the head. It starts looking a little weird. Like hers, both of theirs looks fine. The Corliss, his looks fine. The other sister looks fine. But like the one on the young little girl in the one of the second episode looked weird. That girl's looks weird. Some of them are, yeah, they're a bit distracting. Agreed. But like, and Rainey's was great this episode. Like, they did a real good job with her. It was a subtle performance. Like, it was a lot in just the strength that you could see from the facial expressions. But like, her performance was really good in this episode. And then Damon's And this scene was great. There's also this scene with Damon looking at his brother. Like, you see the look on his face, and he's just, the anguish on his face is so good. Like, look at that. Like, and you see that too in the throne room. But this scene with him and Rhaenyra, with Viserys and Rhaenyra, where she's asking him for help, and like, if you really want me to do this, then you gotta, if you wish me to bear it, then defend me. Then his reaction to that information when he comes back and he doesn't take milk of the poppy, like you can't, it seems like he can't really hear her, and he's not really processing the information because of the pain he's in and how drugged up he is, but he obviously was. And then when he gets off the milk of the poppy in the next scene, and then when he comes into the throne room, that shit's so good. It was freaking phenomenal performances by all of them. Like, they had a lot of grown men tearing up watching this shit, like, from listening to some of the reviews. I'm a man though, I don't cry, so I'm not a little baby. Tim was bawling out of control. He was crying the whole time, the whole episode. Wouldn't stop crying. I think it was more, that's just kind of his normal thing on Sundays, but yeah, he was bawling out of control. But yeah, and then we got that throne room scene, man. It was so freaking good. Like, this dude and you can understand where they're coming from, like, because him flipping out about losing his house seat makes sense. He's like, no, I'm not getting replaced by some bastards. It's like, this is like, why are we all pretending that they are Valerians? They're clearly not. And he's like, why are we gonna just erase my house from existence and hand it over to the Targaryens and Strongs, and pretend like they're Valerian? So you could see where he would just be getting heated more and more, and just kind of at the end of his rope on the situation. And then when Daemon baits him, that stuff's great. But yeah, man, Viserys coming in, like, the looks on everybody's faces, it was all so good. Like, you could see the pain that and it's such a great scene. Like, they took their time with it. Like, you could see a scene like this in isolation, you would be like, what is taking so long? Let's skip the walk. But they've done such a good job with the arc and with the character building to it that this is just an emotional payoff. Like, you feel for Viserys when you're watching this. Yeah, when keeping it real goes wrong. Yeah, he kept it a little too real. Might even got away with just losing a tongue over the bastards comment, but yeah, calling Daemon's wife a whore, that's not going to go over too well. But this pays off because of all they've done in the previous 7 episodes and in the beginning of this episode. And then when you get the look on Daemon, which is so great. Like, in even Alicent there, like, you see, like, her, because obviously she's in this position where she's wanting to get her chess piece in play. She's trying to maneuver things into her favor. So this is upsetting her plans. But you also see her watching Viserys walking down, and she knows how much pain he would be in. And so you see, like, it's more nuanced, the situation. It's not just my plans are being upset, I'm getting screwed. She feels bad for Viserys. Yeah, that's that's a great point. His anguish and pain is a payoff, 100%. It's rare for a show to be able to do that without feeling like it's overly. Yes, 100%. It's not pandering at all. Haven't been watching Andor, but yeah, House of the Dragon is fire. And yeah, Allison, they did a really good job with Allison too and her arc. I mean the arcs on for these characters are so good because Allison starts off as she's just a pawn. She's doing what she's told, following orders, and then just like gradually, once she finds out that Rhaenyra and Viserys were lying to her about the brothel scene and with Kristen Cole, like from that point on, she goes from being a pawn to being a player, and she starts getting into political maneuvering, becoming more cold and calculated. But she's also still doesn't lose who she was previously. They don't just like do a 180, make her a completely different character, where now she's Tywin Lannister. She's still the same character, but she's grown and changed a bit, and they're doing a really good job of growing the characters where their shifts in personality fit with what previously happened. They're not changing their personalities to shift the story. They're letting the story dictate the personalities of the characters, and the actors are doing a really good job of pulling it all off. Like in that performance, everybody's performance in this episode, all the like, there's no dialogue going on right now. This is just the anguish, the pain, the gratitude, all those kind of things, the emotions that they're going through are all being demonstrated by their facial expressions and how good they pull that off. Like Damon here, how well they're able to pull that off is why it's such a powerful scene. Cosmere Junkie, are you still digging Andor? Like through however many, probably 6 or 7 episodes, I would guess. But yeah, and then when I feel like the directing for the episode was super well thought out and focused. Yeah, 100%. They did a great job directing this. And like when he's, getting here trying to go up the steps, he can't. And he calls him off, starts going up, drops the crown to the ground. You just see, like, look at that face and just the pain. Like, that's phenomenal acting. He's pulling this off in a significant way. So good. The man, this episode was so freaking good. And then Damon stepping up, grabbing the crown for him. Like that again, the reason this pays off and gives me like goosebumps watching it is because of their arc from the beginning. This is tying that knot because there is that question of, is Damon just jealous of his brother? Does he just want his position? Does he just want to displace him? But we have that conversation in the first episode where he says, if I was the hand of the king, I would protect you. And he's letting him know that Otto doesn't have your best interest. Otto's out for Otto. And, now that we're coming this full circle here, you see that, and they've had their split. They've had their, where Damon wouldn't even talk to him in the last episode, just kind of walked away from him after they talked for just a brief second. How torn up Viserys was about it. Now Damon looking at him, seeing Viserys step up like a freaking man. Like when he put Rhaenyra in this position, and he's a lot of the responsibility for the split in the house is his fault. And so this is him at the time where it would be the most difficult for him to try to fix it. It would be so easy to just give up. He gives everything he's got one last time to try to put it all to right. And so like when Damon's seeing that, you get that he's obviously pained for seeing his brother feeling like this, looking like this and in this kind of pain. But there's also the pride and seeing the strength and the gratitude for him stepping up for them, and all those kind of things. So it ties it together so well. 6 episodes into Andor, I think it's probably best watching groups of three because so far there are two big storylines, both making up 3 episodes. Fantastic storytelling with zero fat, where character drives it all. Also, if Patty doesn't win an Emmy, the world needs to end. Also, looking forward to the Eamon versus Damon. Yeah, the Patty 100% deserves an Emmy. I bet he wins one. I bet he wins. He's going to win something. He's going to win some awards. There's just no way. There's just nothing on TV where there's that kind of buzz about any kind of actor out there right now. I mean, but there is significant buzz behind his performance, especially after this episode. And it helps because with Damon, the play between those two characters, Damon is so good as well. I mean, that guy deserves an award for his performance as well. But just Patty's took it to a whole nother level with this episode and the arc that they put him on. And so, their combined performances, but there's not really many, weak performances that you're finding in the show. But yeah, the Andor, like you're saying you got to watch it in blocks. One of the things that they keep doing with TV shows is a lot of these writers, they're clearly not putting really competent showrunners in charge of them, because there's so many episodes where there's no arc. It just like abruptly ends, and then the arc takes place over multiple episodes, and it's like that should have been one entire episode, or you should have restructured things so that there's actual arcs for every individual episode. Otherwise, you're gonna shed your audience. That's why, like if that's the thing with Andor, that's probably why it's not like picking up major steam. Even if it's also too, Star Wars has massive baggage at this point. They've shed. I mean, we've gone from The Force Awakens $2 billion down to where now they're not able to crack the top 10 a lot of times with their TV shows. They've just taken Star Wars, which is the number one American franchise, and they've shed a lot of their audience. So there's a lot of baggage with it, but they Disney Plus, they don't put showrunners in charge of their show, and like it's like they just have just a writer's room, and each person writes an episode and they just put them together, but like they're not making sure that there's really good consistent arcs and storylines in every individual episode. They're just like, well, this is going to take 3 episodes for this arc to pay off. It's like, yeah, but every individual episode has to be a story as well. Otherwise, you're going to lose people. They're going to watch it and they're going to be like, what was that? That wasn't a story. And then they're not going to come back the next week and get the conclusion of the arc. You would have to just drop them all at once if you're going to go that route. Doing week to week, you better have an individual story week to week. But I have not been watching Star Wars. They lost me with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, oh God, I hated that show so much. It was the last one for me. That was my last effort into Star Wars. I've had to give it up. I can't go back. They don't know what they're doing. They don't seem to know how to do Star Wars. Like it's not surprising that probably the best show that they got right now with Andor being much popular than Obi-Wan and Darth Vader is because it's like more of a spy. They've set it up more like a spy thriller than a Star Wars story. So it's not surprising that they would be better able to pull off a show that's not your typical Star Wars story like an Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader story should have been. Tony Gilroy is the writer. He did the Bourne franchise and brings that realistic feel. This is his first show, so you can kind of see how this might have been better as 4 standalone movies. I personally like the episodes on their own, but if anyone has a complaint that it feels slow, they should watch it in groups of 3. Like I said, I love it week to week. Yeah, I mean, there's, from what I've heard, there's a lot of complaints that it's slow. A lot of people, and there's also a lot of people that are watching it that are coming in with a lot of Star Wars baggage, so that's going to influence their opinions of it. But yeah, there are complaints that it's slow, but then there's also more positive mentions of the show for Andor, way more than Obi-Wan Kenobi. That show got eviscerated by the fans. So obviously people are like it much better than that. All shows should follow that model. Every episode should have a worthwhile arc. Characters need arcs. Plot need, yeah, yeah. I mean that's what they do in House of the Dragon. And one of the reasons it just keeps building up steam and the audience keeps growing throughout the season. Usually you would expect, and House of the Dragon's got a little bit of a difference because of the baggage with Game of Thrones and how hated the last season was for that. But usually you'll see a show it's a real big audience in the opening, and then it'll shed some people for the next 2, and then kind of flatten out, and then start picking up for the last few. House of the Dragon has been almost straight up. I mean, it's been a slow, gradual increase, but they had more fans that had abandoned it, and then the positive feedback, the word of mouth, starting to pull those people back in. People who were sworn off of it, that positive feedback is pulling them back in. Also, there was so much hype for Obi-Wan and Boba Fett, and those tanked. Those were all. There was almost no excitement for Andor, and it's fantastic. Yeah, that's the big problem with with a show like Obi-Wan Kenobi. You cannot fail on that. Like after you did that, the sequel trilogy and obliterated the fan base. You just shed so much of the fan base and turned them into people who will never watch Star Wars again. When you go to do Obi-Wan Kenobi, you can't fail. That's like the House of the Dragons. Like after season 8 of Game of Thrones, House of the Dragons had to be a massive hit. If HBO missed on House of the Dragon, the A Song of Ice and Fire stories would have been toast. They would have never been able to justify the kind of budgets that the show's getting if they bombed on this one. Like for the Dunk and Egg stories and the Nymeria story that they're talking about, like if they had bombed on this show, it would have been over. They wouldn't have been able to justify those budgets. So like when you do like Obi-Wan Kenobi, that was your shot. You had to have significant buzz and to have the fan base that was left out there talking about like, okay, they get it and they fixed it. And instead they blew it up even more. That show was one plot hole after another. The entire show, like just the premise of it made no sense. Cause it's like, hold on. So like we're at like my thing in the very beginning, I was like, okay, so Darth Vader knows Leia and Obi-Wan have some kind of connection, some way, somehow, that he's willing to come out of hiding to rescue her. So clearly, Bail Organa and him are connected somehow. Like I could put weight on Bail Organa and get to Obi-Wan. So I figured they would have something where it was assumed that Obi-Wan was dead to end the show. I thought that's how they were going to get around that. And then I thought there would be some kind of explanation for why Bail Organa is not being pressed about the rebels by Darth Vader. They just ignored that. They were just like, well, who cares? It's so fucking stupid. Man, Mandalorian. Am I done with the Mandalorian too? Yeah, I don't even know if I can get excited about the Mandalorian. Like they really took the wind out of my sails with with Obi-Wan Kenobi. That was like I was like, all right, man, I'll give you guys one more chance to get it right. And I'm just over Disney. I'm over Disney Plus. They don't know how to make TV shows. Like their best shows are like, yeah, it's solid, and when they miss, it's just they miss so badly, and it's not even just missing on the Star Wars. Like it just wasn't entertaining or stuff. Like it seemed like they didn't care. Like they don't even wrap up things like as big as, why isn't Darth Vader pressuring Bail Organa to find out where the rebels are all these years that passed between what happened in that and the years that Luke and Leia are growing up? Why wouldn't Darth Vader have been pressing Bail Organa? And they care so little that they don't even address it. They just like, oh yeah, he got him back, and now he goes back in hiding, and Darth Vader apparently doesn't give a shit. So stupid. Mandalorian was well received though. No, Mandalorian, the first season was well received. Second season was more or less well received, less so than the first season. Um, I'm curious how well it will do in the third season. We'll see. But as far as like the Star Wars shows on Disney Plus, I haven't seen Andor. That's clearly the best. I would say like if I was Disney, I would hand over Star Wars to someone like Favreau and just be like, it's yours. You do what you got to do with it to try to bring it back and see what he can do. But the Kathleen Kennedy's got to go, man. She's got to go. There's no way to keep that person in charge after how many fans she's turned away from the franchise. That lady, she's just got to go. You got to give it over to someone who is a super fan of Star Wars. And Favreau, even if you are not super hype on the Mandalorian anymore, like Favreau clearly is a big Star Wars fan for sure. That's the case. So yeah, I'm curious what the Mandalorian season 3 will do, numbers wise. But yeah, it's for the most part it's pretty well received. Andor is more or less been kind of well received to, it's slow. That's kind of the reaction to it. But there's not a lot of people that are going like it's trash, they're ruining Star Wars. There's not that kind of vitriolic pushback that you see sometimes. So, but Andor, the problem is Andor's coming after Obi-Wan Kenobi, and so there's so many Star Wars fans that are just done. So it's tough for Andor. They probably should have pulled it back and came out with, I don't know, maybe Andor's a good transition to try to win some people back and then come out with the Mandalorian. I don't know. Andor's greater than Mandalorian. Mandalorian was great, but relied a lot on fan service. Andor's a Star Wars for adults and stands on its own 2 feet. Yeah, it's good then. I mean, they need something. They gotta try to repair some of the damage. I think you gotta clean house. I don't, but that goes to my feelings that I just don't think they give a shit. Because it seems like they're just kind of going through the motion. They're just churning out product, show after show after show, and it doesn't seem like they're taking the care to make sure that they're top tier quality shows. Like you watch House of Dragon versus like the Marvel shows, and it's like, man, those Marvel shows got big budgets. They're not putting near the care into developing the characters and telling a story that House of the Dragon is doing. And then you see like Rings of Power, and it's like, holy shit, they really just did not care. I mean, they did not take the effort to make so many things make sense, to the point where Galadriel jumps out of the boat in the middle of the ocean, admits that it was to her certain death if she hadn't of randomly stumbled onto a raft, and then turns out that Sauron is randomly on this raft, and then they just have this random chance meeting. It's like, What the fuck is he out in the middle of the ocean for? Why? How? And they're just this chance meeting. Oh god! And it only gets stupider. It only gets stupider. Rings of the Power was garbage. The garbage show. I mean, I'm if people like it, everybody you got people got their own subjective taste. So if you like it, great. Like what you like. You don't need my approval to like anything. But yeah, the I'm always watching Rings of Power late. Yeah, that I don't blame you because it's not one of those shows that's must see TV. And I think it's bad TV. I think it's like what I want to do. Me and Tim were talking about we would go through each individual episode and we would go and do like a deep dive rewatch of the show like we do for Kingkiller Chronicles and we're going to do for House of the Dragon. We were talking about doing that for Rings of Power. I don't think I can do it. I don't think I could stomach sitting through it. But what I'm thinking I'll do is we'll go through the character arcs. So we'll go through like Galadriel and Halbrand's arc, some of the Numenorian characters' arcs, the Bronwyn and what's his face's arc, and the Elrond and Durin's arc. Like go through these arcs to just show how bad it was at just the framing of a story, trying to tell a story. They're not competent at it. They put two inexperienced showrunners on it. And even if it was like, this is not a story for me, I don't like the changes, that kind of thing, you still could have put together a competent story. This looked like amateurs were given the reins of a story, and the only thing that didn't make it just a complete abomination is the money that was put into it. Some of it looked pretty, but storytelling wise, it was clear that these were amateurs. It was super hard for me to suspend disbelief watching Rings of Power. There's just so much that's unappealing and disjointed. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So they got a part where Isildur, he goes into a burning building. The building collapses on him. There's no way he would have survived. I mean, he shouldn't have survived getting hit with a volcanic cloud that would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 2,000 degrees. He should have been turned to ash to begin with. He's not invincible. He's not Superman. Just that's the internal they just blew up the internal logic of that world, where now elves and men can survive temperatures that are just impossible to survive for them based on what is actually written into the world. But he magically survives, and then he goes into a house. The house falls on him completely. A complete house collapses on top of him that's burning, and they leave him. They go. They presume he's dead. They leave, and that's it for him. They left it for the season with no resolution. No one finds him. His horse doesn't like dig him out of there, pull him out. They don't show him coming out of that. So like these writers are like, oh, we'll have this big mystery on Isildur. Like what kind of mystery is that? Like everybody knows he's the guy that's going to cut the ring off of Sauron's finger. He's not dead. So why are you leaving this to like some mystery? Like that's just stupid. Like who are you writing this for? Like you're clearly not writing it for people who like Lord of the Rings, because anybody who likes Lord of the Rings knows he's not dead. So who's this mystery for? It's ridiculous. It's like who do they think are like people are coming in watching Rings of Power and have never seen the Lord of the Rings trilogy or never read the Lord of the Rings, don't know anything about the story? It's just ridiculous. Oh man. But yeah, I hate that show. I hate it. I hate it so much. It annoys me. But House of the Dragons is pure fire. Him putting on the crown. Like that's wrapping up an arc. And then Damon doing what he does. I'm not going to show that. That'll probably get booted off of YouTube. But the culmination in what he does when old boy calls Rhaenyra a whore so great when he's like, he can keep his tongue. It's such a great line. Like the badassery of the two brothers here in this scene is it's great because it's you get the strength, you also get the vulnerability, the pain. Like uh, there's depth of emotion that is portrayed in the scene, and you also have like the powerful men, the good dad, the good brother, the good husband, the badass, and then you get Aegon's same type of thing. This show is doing a real good job of portraying complex characters, um, the strength and weakness and vulnerability and evilness and goodness in the men and in the women. There's so many great characters. What adaptations do you hope are coming for Cosmere? Insert equals cliffhanger, regardless of the context, working on or continuity. Yeah, Isildur. Wow. Yeah, it's a mystery. I wonder if he's alive. Yep. Adaptations that I hope for the Cosmere. Stormlight, obviously. Mistborn. I think Elantris. I would really like to see done as a movie because not a big fan of the book. I like this story, but I didn't like his writing that much back then. Like I thought I didn't think he was really good at having complex characters. They felt very kind of like cardboard cutout characters. Like I just didn't think he was that great at developing characters or dialogue with that first run. But the story is good. You could see the talent. Like it just seemed like not that he was like terrible or anything. It was just that I could see the talent there, and you could see why he developed into who he is now, where he's one of the best. But you could see the inexperience in that story. So I would like to see it done as a movie, where you could have people acting those roles, bringing them to life, and also better dialogue inserted into it, where it feels more natural. So I'd really like to see Elantris as a movie. Mistborn, I would like to see. You could do Mistborn probably as a trilogy movie, or you could do it as a TV show. I think it would work either way. Stormlight has to be a TV show. You can't do that as a movie, not without butchering it. But yeah, I think like those would be the three that I would want to see done first before he does anything else. Sounds like Mistborn, if I'm not mistaken, isn't he? Doesn't he have an adaptation coming out for Mistborn? But I would really like to see how how they would do Mistborn, whether they would go movie or show. And one of the things I'm hoping for is that obviously you can see that George R. R. Martin has a lot of control over his properties with HBO and what he's willing to let them do and to come out with. And so he can make sure that the people who are producing it are pretty super fans of his work. Obviously, Game of Thrones kind of bombed at the end, but you can lay a lot of blame on him on not having a finished series. I mean, they started putting out a show, and he didn't come out with the last two books before they finished. So they're adapting his story that was unfinished. So without his work there to guide them, sounds like it fell off the rails. I didn't watch it, but not the end. Not the I stopped either at end of season 3 or end of season 4. Can't remember. So whatever, the one with the purple wedding and the mountain versus the viper, I saw through that season. But yeah, Mistborn, I think could be done really well, and I think that with that Kickstarter that Brandon Sanderson had, I think he's got the juice where he could be in a position like Martin, where he can make sure that he's getting it adapted the way he wants. Where at least whether it's good or not, you can say that he got what he wanted, and if it's not good, then it's not because they betrayed his story. It's because he failed, and he didn't get the right people. The people he got in charge of it weren't able to deliver a story in a way that the fans would enjoy. So I think the kind of leverage he's got, I mean, pulling in 42 million independently with just straight from the fans, that's a game changer, because you could do a TV show for $40 million. You could do a really good one for $100 million. You raise 200 million. He could do a show where he could raise 50, 100 million from fans as a Kickstarter, and then turn around to investors for the rest, and then shop it, put it out himself, shop it to Netflix or HBO or whoever to buy it, to put it on their thing without giving up his rights to it. So he has a lot of control over what he does with his future because of his pull with the audiences. So I'm real curious what he's going to do in the future. I think there's a lot of potential because his books are tailor-made to be good stories. I'm curious whether it'll be put out well, because one of the problems we're seeing is that Hollywood currently is much better at telling a story like House of the Dragon, where it's a darker, grittier, not black and white, a gray story where there's not clear good, bad. They're more they're good at like Breaking Bad, Sopranos, the show, Deadwood, and now House of the Dragons, Game of Thrones. Like, they're good at these darker, grittier shows. Once you get into like good versus evil fantasy, I haven't seen him pull that off very well. Except Peter Jackson did with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. He nailed it, but I've seen more misses than hits. Authors having greater control of the end product sounds like the makings for much better adaptations. I agree. If they can wield enough control, at least have enough control that they can make sure that the person who's adapting their material is a super fan of that material, and that he's got enough of a wall between him, the producer, and the executives. Because, man, you can see that there's a lot of TV shows where it's clear that these corporations are like, okay, we need this, we need this, we need this, we need this, and we need this. Put those in no matter what. And where there's things that are put in these stories where it's like, did you guys just shove that in? This doesn't even make sense. Why is this in here? Why is this character in this story? Like, you just shoved in a random character. You're just checking boxes for no reason. They're not part of the narrative or anything. You're just like, oh, well, we have to do all these things because some corporate executive demands it. Where it's not like there's not a vision, there's not a vision and a purpose, and every piece and everything is in service of the story. They're in service of their own, values and their own systems that they want to put forward. And that's, I think, if you can get, storytellers and the people who are the showrunners, if you could put a wall up between them and the executives, which you need to have the kind of pulse of like a Brandon Sanderson or a Martin to do that, I think you'll get better shows out of it. Viserys looks like he has a Ferraro Rocher as his eye in that image. Delicious. I don't know what that is. Ferraro Rocher. I have to look that up. Ferraro Rocher. It's innovative shape, round but irregular, and its unmistakable golden wrapping. Some kind of candy. Come up with better candy. It's probably dark chocolate. It's probably not even delicious milk chocolate. Probably gross dark chocolate. Just an abomination. I kind of, the way I deal with chocolates is I see milk chocolate as like House of the Dragon, and dark chocolate is like Rings of Power, and where it's just like it's clear which is way better. One's good and one is not good. Let's see. But yeah, Cosmere Junkie, what adaptations are you hoping for coming from the Cosmere? Oh man, I would love to see what they could do with a TV show for Stormlight. I would. I want him. I hope. I would like to see him do Mistborn and Elantris first. Get a couple shows under his belt, and then go for Stormlight. I would love to see a Stormlight show. Dalinar, Kaladin, just two characters in the vein of, like, you could pull off in the vein of Viserys and Daemon in this show, where you get the right actors, the right writers, the right producers, could become two iconic characters that are going to be talked about for a long, long time. Like I'm just curious how they would do Stormlight, if they would lean into it being more darker, grittier, or if they would do more like like a Wheel of Time type of less dark, more suitable for younger audiences type of thing. I don't know. I would assume that they would go lighter and try to pull in younger audiences for the show, but given the what happens to all the characters, you could go pretty dark and gritty with a Stormlight Archive show. So I'm curious how they'll do something like that. Yeah, and old Doug with his terrible job, man. The old king, man, having him, it's a shit job. Someone's got to do it, right, Doug? Old Dougie. Yeah, Doug's great. We gotta have to get back to old Dougie once we get through Kingkiller Chronicles, and we get through like House of the Dragon, which that won't take it. I mean, that's just 10 episodes, so that's not that big of a deal. But finishing up Kingkiller Chronicles, where we can just turn our focus completely on Stormlight and get Tim to read all the books, so that I don't have to dance around anything, and I can just start diving into it, and we can just cover it like we do the Kingkiller Chronicles, where we can just dive fully deep into it. That I look forward to when we get back to Stormlight. That's a fun series to talk about, and there's so much good shit that happens in those books. He's a master at creating a crescendo for his stories. Like, some people will talk about, like, his books are long. Some of it they could you could cut out. It's not necessary. But I don't think that people understand why his crescendos are able to build the way that they're able to build. And it's because of how, without the slow burn in the beginning, if you're not kind of just slowly but surely getting to the place, it doesn't have that kind of payoff. Like, you need the arc. You need the beginning of Daemon and Viserys' relationship for this scene to pay off. Without all those building blocks, this scene does not have the emotional impact that it does. Same thing with his stories. Without all those building blocks, you don't get those big crescendo, big payoffs. Has there been any news on Kingkiller getting made as a show movie? No. They Lionsgate had picked it up. They were originally talking about making the books into a trilogy, which I don't see how they could do that. I don't know how you tell that story in 6 to 9 hours. And they were talking about doing a prequel show that would have focused on a Rue troop, probably, Arlewin and Lorien. They probably would have focused in on them and told their kind of backstory, is my guess. But that show didn't get picked up. Originally, it was going to come out on Showtime, but they didn't end up picking it up. So, and it got, they shopped it around, but obviously no one picked it up. And so that's dead. That show's dead. So they're still left with the trilogy. Who knows when they'll do that? They're probably not going to come out with anything until he comes out with a third book. They're likely, given the fan, how many fans are, over the wait. They probably need to finish the books before they come out with a show, or they might have some rights on their hands. The speculation is Mistborn, but nothing is confirmed. Great spot to start. Yeah, Mistborn would be really good. Kelsier is probably my favorite character of the Cosmere. I love that dude. And I was always, like, when I first got into it, I was reading, like, when I would see, like, there's people who don't like Kelsier that think he's a terrible person, and I'm like, man, our tastes could not be more diametrically opposed. I love his character. He's so great. He's like Han Solo. I mean, he basically came up with another Han Solo type character. He's an all-time classic immediately. He's so great. Like, if they get the right actor for that show, if you get like some kind of lesser known or unknown actor for the role of Kelsier and they hit it out of the park, that guy's going to be a superstar. He's going to be massive in the entertainment industry from that role. That will play very well. Assuming that they put out a good show. Assuming that they do. But it sounds like he's been writing scripts for Mistborn, so I think he's going to have a big hand in the script of the show. I don't think he would accept, that he's just handing over the IP to somebody else to do with it what they want. I think he's going to have a big role to play in the show. So, yeah, I think he's going to do a really good job with it. But yeah, no news on Kingkiller Chronicle movies or anything. Just kind of everybody's just sitting and waiting for the third book to come out. I don't think we're going to get anything new until that comes out. And then not only does it got to come out, it's got to be really good. If he bombs on the last book, that series is dead. It's dead. So hopefully, but I can't. He's just too good of a writer. Like, unless he's just allowed, he just completely changes it, because it's like, he's super into politics, so there's always that. You never know. But like Stephen King is like that. He still writes books that are good. Like, I mean, he can separate, when it's time to go to work from being a political activist. So that's the only way I could see it like bombing, is like if he just started ripping up his story to make it some political activist manifesto type thing. I mean, he's just too good of a writer, I think, to do that, and I think he had a really good idea of where he was going to go with the story. So I bet it's good. I don't think he'll come out with it unless it is good. Yeah. I mean, I'm still. He said, I refuse to believe that he'll bomb the third book. Yeah, I'm obviously 100% on on board with Kingkiller Chronicles. I still keep reading them because I assume that the third book is going to tie things up and it's going to be phenomenal. It's just, it takes a lot of work. You got to mix in Jack in the Box. He hasn't brought that up yet. You have to flesh out Grey Dalcenti. He's obviously the pillar of the story, and he's only been mentioned in one line. So, like, you got all these kind of things that they're going to have to really flesh out and bring to life. And he's got a lot of work ahead of him, but I assume it's going to be really good. If he F's it up, yeah, if he F's it up, it's going to be extremely disappointing. He may have to retire from social media if he bombs on the third book, because the roasting will never end. Like, man, they like you if you look anytime Martin, or especially Martin, but even Patrick Rothfuss, anytime they post anything on social media, they're just bombarded with people pissed that their next book hasn't released yet. So imagine if they bomb, they come out with a terrible book. And now, one of the things too is when he comes out with a third book, there's already a committed base of people who are going to hate it no matter what now, because they're so mad about the wait. So there's just going to be no winning those people over. But if you put out something that is obviously good, that will be a small minority. Like, there was a committed group of people who were going to hate House of the Dragon no matter what. And there was a committed group of people who were going to hate Rings of Power no matter what. But House of the Dragon has a very favorable rating and approval from the audience at large, because most people are not, online mixing it up into the making of a show. That's the super fans doing that shit, and that's the smaller segment of the general audience. But the like Rings of Power didn't win over the general audience. Like, a lot of those people were like, "What the hell is this?" And so they got crapped on, and the latest Nielsen ratings, they shed, I think it was like 20% of their audience, the minutes watched from the previous week. So they had an extra episode now. So this was like for their fourth episode. So going from the week that their fourth episode came out. And so all the minutes watched for Rings of Power dipped below 1 billion. It was like 960 million or something like that. Dipped below 1 billion minutes watched. So that means for all 4 episodes was less than 1 billion. The previous week, it was at 1.2 billion for 3 episodes. And then it was higher than that just for the first 2 episodes. So not only are they losing people, but they're not having people that are going through and binge watching enough to overcome what they're losing. They're just shedding a lot of people. Whereas the House of Dragon, the opposite's happening. The more episodes that are coming out, their audience is growing. And with the way Nielsen ratings work, House of the Dragon, it's not counting. They're just talking about the streaming. So, and a subset of the streaming. But just on the streaming, House of the Dragon started at I don't remember what the first release was, but it was a lot lower than Rings of Power for streaming. Once you calculate in people who watch HBO on TV, then House of the Dragon had a bigger audience than Rings of Power overall. But just for streaming, Rings of Power, that's the only way you can watch it, is through streaming. So Rings of Power beat House of Dragon streaming the first release when they were matched up against each other. The next week, that gap had closed significantly, where they were at 1.2 billion. House of Dragon was at like 1 billion. Now they're both in 900 million range for this latest release. But again, that's a third of the audience for House of the Dragon is coming from people watching it on TV and other things. So when you add in that extra third, they're way above Rings of Power in viewership. And so, but the fact that they shed 20% between episodes 3 and 4, and I'm really curious where their viewership numbers are going to be. Yeah, yeah, but how many sampled the show? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, 100 million. They said 100 million people have watched it. I mean, and that could be 100 million people who 50 million of them watch for 1 minute. I'm the same. Mistborn and Elantris are great starting points and then lead into Stormlight, hopefully, but I would only want him to sell the rights to the first 5 books so they don't get ahead of him. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you would, yeah, he would, surely he would do that, you would think. I mean, and you don't need to do the last 5 books. But that's why I would say do Mistborn first, then do Elantris, maybe you do Warbreaker too, and then get into Stormlight, and hopefully he's got at least one, book 6 out, maybe. Who knows? I mean, because shows take a long time to develop. So if they did 3 shows or movies, that would take years to get through that, and so that would give them time to at least get started on that back 5. I love Kelsier, but he is a bit of a psychopath. Believing anyone who serves the Empire in any way deserves to die. Kelsier it's about destination before journey. Yeah, oh yeah, 100%. He's a maniac. That's what I love about him. He's like a Sandor Clegane type of character, where it's like, yeah, he's not a good guy. Not just a he's I think overall he's largely a good guy, but he's also a bastard and will do evil stuff and do mess. He's a lot like Daemon Targaryen in this show, where yeah, he's or Aemon Targaryen. More closer to Daemon. Aemon's a little different, but yeah, like Sandor Clegane, he's a character in that kind of vein where there's some good stuff about him and there's some bad stuff, but the fun nature of him gives him that Han Solo feel to him. So you could kind of compare him against other characters, but he's unique. He's different. He's not like everybody else. So he's his own unique character, but he's in that kind of rogue vein where it's a guy you love him, but you probably wouldn't want to have your daughter marry him. Probably is not the best life for your kids. But yeah, so what else happened in this episode? The dinner. Man, that face and that message, if you can't do it for me, do it for my kids. And they've done a good job with these kids, like Jace. That's how I picture him in the books. He seemed like a Rob Stark-esque, I would say. Kind of trying to do his duty. Good dude. Aemon's great. The freaking shithead, Aegon the Older. He's such a shithead. I'm glad that they're leaning into his shitbaggery in the show, but he's entertaining to watch. Like his stuff, that stuff where his wife does the toast of him, and she's like, "Hey, marriage ain't so bad. Sometimes they're drunk and they leave you alone," or whatever she said. Like they mostly leave you alone unless they're drunk. Oh, it's hilarious. And then Otto, like proud grandpa moment at there is like, good. Put him in his place. Kid needs to get his shit together. He's got to be driving Otto nuts. Someone was talking about on Twitter, talking about Otto, like, he would have had the plan to unseat Lucerys from Driftmark. He would have had that plan locked down and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, man, some people are reading Otto as if he's Tywin Lannister, and the show is not showing him like that, and the books certainly do not portray him like that. He's a calculating guy, but he's not like some mastermind. I mean, we see it in the show clearly when he approaches Viserys about Rhaenyra and Daemon in the brothel. He completely bungled that whole situation, and it got him booted out of King's Landing. That's not a mastermind. That's he got he got maneuvered out of his position of power by by being stupid. He shouldn't. That was something he should have just left. He shouldn't have touched it. Or what Tywin would have done is he would have spread the rumor throughout King Landing and let it become a talking point amongst the small folk and the small council, and it just kind of trickles its way up to Viserys. He wouldn't have approached him himself and delivered the message. It's the kill the messenger thing. Like, yeah, there's a reason there's that saying. You don't want to be the guy that's delivering that kind of information to the king, especially if you're doing it and it's going to benefit you by doing it. Yeah, you definitely don't want to be the one delivering that info. It's a stupid move. So it's like he's not some mastermind, and Viserys is not like his. He's not able to just play Viserys. Viserys is still in control. Viserys doesn't want to take milk of the poppy. It's not like Otto can hold him down and pour it down his throat. Viserys could have him killed. Like, his Kingsguard around the king at all times. So they're gonna be loyal to King Viserys over Otto Hightower. He does not have that kind of pull. Yeah, yeah. Love his determination to smile and laugh in the face of terrible circumstances. Yeah, he's great. He's great. He's a fun. Kelsier is a fun character to read. He's one of Brandon Sanderson's more complex characters. Like a lot of them are lean into either more good or more bad. Like Sadius, there's complexity of the characters. There's obviously good character development in his stories, but Kelsier is complex in a different way, in that it's tough to kind of pin him down as what kind of person he is. Whereas, like, you can look at Dalinar, even though he's done some bad things in his past, but you can clearly see he's on a good person path. And same with Kaladin, or Sadius in the reverse, where he's evil man. And yeah, so Kelsier is a good, unique character in his world. Trying to think if there's anybody even kind of that I would put in that same kind of vein. I don't know. Maybe the what's his face from Warbreaker. But yeah, man, I got to get back and go through them again. I'm starting to, like, even with books I've read multiple times and stuff. The names of the characters, there's so many names. They start to fade if I go too long without doing a reread. So I gotta, like, go back through it again, because I'm like drawing a blank on the dude's name from Warbreaker right now, and the the Sword Master and Stormlight. Drawing a blank on his name. But yeah, I can't wait to see what Sanderson has in store. I think Martin is obviously not obviously, but he should be the template for authors getting their stuff made into TV shows. Like, whatever he's doing, they should be talking to him and figuring out what he had to do to get it done the way that those first few episodes of Game of Thrones got made, and then what they've done with House of Dragon. Even if they missed the mark at the end of Game of Thrones, which I'm just taking people's word on it that it's trash. I haven't watched it, but or at least the last season is trash from the fan reaction. But leaving that aside, like, the first season is so close to the book and so well done. Second season diverges a little bit, but it's still pretty close to the book. Third season diverges a little bit more. Still pretty close to the book, though. Like, that, the first 3 or 4 seasons, that's top tier adaptation. Like that's what you want in an adaptation. There's some changes, but they're telling the story. They're telling the story of the book. They're not trying to tell their own story and modernize the story or whatever nonsense they come up with to justify butchering an adaptation these days. They were trying to honor his books and just bring it to life clearly, and House of the Dragon is clearly doing that for Fire and Blood. What's it the Wheel of Time is going their own route. Like that's not that much like the books. I mean, there are characters and parts that are like the books, but the Wheel of Time is tough though. There's so many books and they have to condense it. It's one of the ones where it seems impossible to adapt because unless you're willing to take the risk of having a show that's going to go for 15 seasons. You got to be willing to do that to do it right. If you want a faithful adaptation, if you're just going to do your own thing by and large, and you're just going to try to keep some of the elements, well, you're going to lose a lot of people doing that. A lot of the hardcore fan base is going to walk away, and then see what kind of audience they get. That last episode was like, uh-oh. But maybe one thing I'll give Wheel of Time is a little bit of a break on that last episode is that actor just dipped out, which was crazy. Like a main actor just like leaves a TV show during filming of the TV show. And they have to just write him out of like the last episode or the last 2 episodes or whatever they did. Like, I mean, I would love to know what the hell happened. Like, that's crazy. Like, someone did something real messed up. Like, I mean, because I've never heard of anything like that. So maybe that blew up the end for him, but it still wasn't good. The first episode and the last episode were the worst for that show, which is not ideal. You should put your best foot forward with the first episode, and then the last 2 episodes should be 2 of the best, if not the best, episodes. But yeah, and then let's see what else happened in this episode before I cut out. Oh, in this scene, him talking to Allison. I love the way they've done that. Like, kind of, because that is a total human reaction where he thinks he's talking to Rhaenyra, and that Aegon the Younger, her oldest son with Daemon, is the prince that was promised. But she hears Aegon and then just clings on to that's her Aegon. Can't be Rhaenyra's Aegon. Obviously, he's talking about, Aegon the Older. Even though if she stepped back and she was thinking about it dispassionately, of course he was talking about the younger, because his whole life has been about this. I want peace for the realm. He wouldn't be like on his last dying breath being like, fight a civil war for me. Screw everything I've ever said in my last moments of getting off my deathbed to try to put things to right, blow all that shit up, start a civil war. Like, obviously he wouldn't be saying that. So, but it's a very human thing where you're going to hear what you want to hear. People, you can show the same scene to, the same thing being said when people have emotions to it. People can watch the same video and have wildly different interpretations of what's happening based on what they wanted to happen. And we definitely see that in this scene. So it's great. Perfectly sets up the end. And that ending is with him being like, no more like the tear dropping down and just kind of giving up. Finally, it's like I did all I could do. Gave it everything he had. I love. Yeah. Yeah, that was great. That was a great ending. What a powerful episode too, man. Like, because I went into that episode, I was like, okay, so we're gonna get the the scene in the throne room where Lucerys gets is I because I knew like the way it is in the book is the what's his face. I'm trying to blank on the Corliss's. I think they say that that character is Corliss's brother in the show, but that's his cousin in the book. And when his cousin makes that challenge to Rhaenyra's son's position, Rhaenyra sends Daemon after him. Daemon cuts his head off, and then they feed him to Rhaenyra's dragon. And then two other cousins go to King's Landing, and they petition King Viserys on the issue, and they start calling her kids bastards, and so he has their tongues cut out immediately. So they kind of combined those two events, and I kind of figured that's what they were going to do, considering the prominence they made for that either Corliss's brother or cousin on the show. But yeah, because he says uncle, so yeah, so he's clearly he's the brother. Yeah, yeah, I agree. He saw his first wife. Yeah, what was her name? Aemma Targaryen, something like that. I like it in the previous episode when he calls Alicent Aemma, like just calls her the wrong name. It's classic. Little dig, not perfect purposefully, but still a little dig. Um, but then I knew they would do like the dinner scene, and we'd get the three strong boys. But I thought that was pretty much how the episode was gonna go. I did not think it was gonna have this kind of weight to it. I did not. There's no chance I thought this was gonna be my favorite episode. I was like, in my mind, I was prepared to be watching an episode that I was like, it's probably middle of the pack is what I expected. Middle of the pack to one of the weaker of the episodes, given the material they were covering. The fact that they were able to do that with the material that they were covering, man, is that a good sign for what's to come. Because they have some great shit coming up. There is some phenomenal storylines to go through. Daemon is going to be fun to watch. And it's going to be fun to watch Aemon Targaryen as well. But, yeah, if you guys don't got anything else, I think that's kind of what we'll do. Like me and Tim, we'll go when we do this. I'm not sure. We might even do it as a live stream when we cover the episode. But we'll either do a live stream or we'll just record it. And then we'll go through scene by scene of the episodes. We'll cover what happened in the episode, kind of our thoughts on that. And then we'll go into how it differs from the book. And then we'll, if we have like spoiler information, like things we want to talk about as far as the wider scope of the story, we'll do that at the end. And we'll save it for the end. So people who don't want to know what's going to happen, we'll talk about it, without giving spoilers of what's to come. But then we'll also, for people who've read the books, we'll discuss what is to come and what we're looking forward to seeing and those kind of things as well, so we can kind of have both discussions at the same time. But that's kind of how we're planning on covering it. Just kind of have me and Tim up on the screen, and then also the HBO screen going through and talking about the different scenes in the episode. But yeah, so I think I'm gonna wrap it up there and in this stream. But yeah, it's fun shooting the shit. We will think probably the next recording we're gonna do is get the next episode for Kingkiller Chronicles up. Got to get the chapter with Pentha and Kvothe the Man Mothers chapter. Got to get that up and posted up. Kind of the hurricane kind of threw us off. I didn't have power for a while, and so it kind of threw us off our routine. So we've kind of been at a lull where we haven't been able to drop an episode here for a few weeks, but get back into the groove, get another Kingkiller Chronicle episode out. And we got just basically a little over a week and a couple days, and then we'll have all of the House of Dragon done, and then we can just go back and do a deep dive rewatch on that, and then we'll just kind of bang out Kingkiller Chronicles and House of the Dragon episodes. And then once we get through House of Dragon, then we might go back and just kind of go through the arcs for different characters of Rings of Power. But yeah, we'll also try to pop on, do some streams, shoot the shit with anybody who shows up. It's good talking to you. Cosmere Junkie, get ready for Mistborn. It's right around the corner. Probably only got around like 2-3 years, and it'll be here. But all right.